Your opponent just played a brilliant move, but it's actually a blunder. Today, you're going to learn how to win more games by never trusting your opponent. Let's see our first example. Let's say that you're playing white in this position, and your opponent just plays knight takes e4. And at first you're thinking, wait, that pawn is defended. Why would he just give me a knight? But then you realize, oh, the rook is actually pinning the pawn. So my rook is undefended, he's just going to take it. So you start to trust your opponent and you don't look further. But what's actually happening is that your opponent saw that far as well. But whenever the opponent has an idea, try going one step further to see if you can beat them at their own game. In fact, white can take this free knight, because when the rook takes the rook, the queen is the one that defends the rook from the other side of the board. Objectively, that's pretty difficult to see because it's a backwards queen move, and you wouldn't really expect something like this to happen in a real game. So a lot of players assume that if something is not defended from a nearby position, it's just not defended at all. So for this reason, black's move was actually a blunder, and white went on to win a quite a nice game here. This is the key idea of why you should never trust your opponent in chess. Always verify their idea with your own calculation, and sometimes you will see that their idea is simply a blunder. Now, you may be saying, okay, but this never happens in my games. I can assure you that it does. I'm going to show you a game of my own. I'm a FIDE master, and a game of two super grandmasters where this happens. So this happens at all levels. We all have different ideas, and sometimes those ideas look like they work, but they actually don't. So this could be deeper or not so deep, but I'm going to show you various examples from different games. So this was the introductory example. Let's move on to my game position that I had the other day in a training game. So I was playing as white in this position. My opponent just pushed the e5 pawn, and I cannot take this because my pawn is pinned to my king. So I just have to retreat, because if I take with the bishop, the knight would take, and again, my pawn is pinned. So for that reason, I simply retreated with bishop e3, and the battle begins after rook e8, with the idea of lining up towards my undefended pieces. So he's threatening pawn takes pawn. If I take back with a knight, then my bishop will hang. For that reason, I played rook e1 so that I can recapture and my bishop would not hang. My opponent decided to take, and I recapture with the knight, threatening a discovered attack. And my opponent shocked me with rook takes e3. And this game is a little bit of a shock because I had done some calculation beforehand to make sure that this kind of stuff didn't work, but he pulled the trigger on it anyway. So I could easily start just trusting my opponent because he's 2500 rated on LionChess and just say, okay, I lost a piece, let's minimize the damage or something like this. But I'm like, wait, hold on, does this actually work? Because you should always trust your own calculation. So what's the calculation here? So his idea, first of all, is try to figure it out, is he wants to remove the defender of the central knight. That's the point of giving up a rook for a bishop here. So after rook takes here, I'm expected to recapture. And then he would go knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, which would put my rook under a pin, which is also undefended, and it would also fork my knight. So that seems very powerful. However, concrete calculation says that you should go a step further and try to figure out maybe a flaw in that idea. So if you take your time and really figure it out, this is the position that we're looking at, you would quite quickly see that if you go just one move further, so rook takes rook, knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn, we just have queen e6 checkmate. But this is really difficult to see from a psychological standpoint because when you see black going all out on your king side, you're not really looking at their king too much. So you have to kind of zoom out and look at the entire board. I'm sure that black assumed that after this entire sequence, I would have to play a passive move. For example, rook e1, king f, like something to defend my rook, pawn to f4, something like this. But they forgot to look at their own king too. This is how the game went, and I simply played queen e6 checkmate, seeing all of that beforehand. Hope you're enjoying the video. Just a small pause to remind you that I'm still accepting students in my personalized one-on-one coaching program if you want to get better even faster. There's only so much depth I can go into with these YouTube videos that are for everyone, but we take a look at your specific situation in the coaching program. So link down below and I'll see you there. And the final example of why you should never trust your opponent in chess comes from a super grandmaster game. So this was played between Sergey Karjakin and Levon Aronian, both very, very strong grandmasters. And let's see what happened in this middle game. So in this position, in the opening, sorry, we have the move f6 played. And f6 is a decent strategic move because you're looking to dominate the knight a little bit and support the center pawn, which is being pressured by the rook on e1 and knight on e5. So you're defending the pawn, you're taking away the g5 square against some knight g5 when the queen moves and so on. So it makes sense as a move. However, this is a tactical blunder, and white wins a piece. However, white did not expect this because we're at the Super Grandmaster level in the opening, and this never happens. So white just wasn't on their tactical alert because why would they be? They're playing Levon Aronian, legend of the game. So they could have won a piece here. Try to pause the video and see how white, by force, wins a piece. I'm going to spoil the solution in 3, 2, 1. The move is c4. Very forcing move, so it should be considered. And the main point is behind this move, wherever the knight moves, let's say back to e7, that we have the move c5. This is what wins a piece. Because, let's take a look at what happens. First of all, if this bishop takes this pawn, we just take the bishop with check. We're up a piece, easy. However, the main challenge for black is like, oh, can't they just take here? And when we recapture, they just take this one and they're up a pawn? No, because queen takes back comes with a check. That's why white wins a piece. And once you deal with a check, let's say king h8 or block, whatever, then we have time for pawn takes bishop. And white is just up a piece. So this could have happened at the level of 2780. So this is very wild, and you should never trust your opponent. So Levon Aronian plays f6, and Sergey Karjakin just plays d4, challenging the center. Game goes on like nothing happened. That is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. I read all of my comments, so don't hesitate. And if you like the idea of chess improvement in general, consider subscribing to my channel so you never miss another upload and improve even faster. Thank you very much for watching once again. Have an awesome week, and I'll talk to you very soon. Take it easy.